But because we're able to look at ourselves, to look in the mirror and make sure we're doing everything correctly. Sergeant Major of the Army Dan Dailey cares deeply about every one of you and every soldier that stands behind you. The panel members that you see up here all volunteered to sit on this panel and share their thoughts in regard to this very important subject. When they meet together in the Sergeant Major of the Army's office, they discuss real issues. And I will sit off to the side sometimes and I'll listen to the things that they say. And they talk about duties and responsibilities, roles and functions, how we can get better, who does it really well. And hopefully they'll translate that to you and you'll see the fervor and the passion that they have for soldiers all over the world, and especially for their role and function as the senior sergeant major in their organization. You know, we've got a lot of creeds. We've got the NCO creed. And do we really live it? Do we think about it? Do we practice it every day? You know, as a retired sergeant major, I'll tell you, I think you all are the most incredible group of soldiers today in our Army than we've ever had. I think we're the best that we've ever been, and that's just my opinion. But to take a look at that, to compare that to the things that we should do and the things that we know we need to do, Sergeant Major Sellars, the Commandant, down at the end has prepared a video. His guys worked pretty hard to take a look at what the creed of the non-commissioned officer means and how it relates to these roles and functions. So we're going to show you the video before we take off, and then I'm going to come back and tell you what the agenda is. Let me say, when you look at the video, really think about it. Think about you and think about your role and function and think about all the soldiers that you lead every day. It's important to consider the NCO creed and what it really means to us. Sergeant Major Sellars, please.
So before we go into the video, good morning, how's everybody doing? I just want to give you some context and clarity about what you're about to see. So last class that graduated from the Sergeant Major Academy had about 705 Sergeants Major graduate from the course. And as I engaged with them on a daily basis almost, one of the things I figured out is that they were highly motivated, disciplined, physically fit. They were educated and experienced, but they didn't like the outcomes of what we were going to give them as they walked out the door, coming to the organizations as a new Sergeant Major. One of the things that they lacked was NCO roles and responsibilities and the functions of a senior non-commissioned officer in that role. And so what we're trying to do here is outline and kind of specify some things that kind of give you your left and right limits on how to operate and function. Not to really tell you how to operate as a sergeant major, because I think we already know how to do that. What we're trying to do is clarify some roles and responsibilities as it ties into the leader core competencies as we unveil them this year for the entire Army. So we all know there's 6 leader core competencies that we're going to put inside of every NCO professional development course, starting with the distributed leaders course, leading our way through the basic leader course to the Sergeant Major Academy. And within those 6 leader core competencies, it was a great idea to kind of roll this out so that you see what the LCCs are, so we're all speaking the same language when it comes to leadership and our roles and functions as a Sergeant Major, and have that cascade down. We also tied in the NCO creed, because soldiers view us and officers view us through that creed. They see what they see from us as a basic example of how to be, know, and do as a non-commissioned officer, and they judge us how we operate through that creed. And so as the Sergeant Majors up here to my right describe each of the leader core competencies and some of the basic fundamental things that we should be looking at as a senior corps. Once that's done, we're going to codify it, and the next step is to codify it into our NCO guide. So if you haven't taken a look at the NCO guide lately that was produced back in 2015, it's going to be updated here fairly recently. Once we outline everything that we say that we should be doing as a senior non-commissioned officer corps and have that cascade down all the way to the lowest sergeant. And so finally, I just want to tell you that as we unveil LCCs this year, you're going to see some very familiar faces here describing the difference between the non-commissioned officer creed and how we perform on a daily basis inside of the leader core competencies that you're going to see. Some of the familiar faces that you might see are going to be all the Penn State fellow graduates from the Sergeant Major course that are now facilitators in the Academy. And just going to give you an example of leadership core competencies and how they tie into the creed and what our roles and functions are we be, know, and do on a daily basis. So with that, roll the video, please.
When I see a Command Sergeant Major, I see every enlisted soldier in this organization in formation behind him.
No one is more professional than I. I am a non-commissioned officer, a leader of soldiers. As a non-commissioned officer, I realize that I am a member of a time-honored corps, which is known as the backbone of the Army.
Sergeants Major manage a variety of projects. This is what we do. We apply our experience to ensure the organization and its members strive for continuous process improvements in the development of military professionals at every level.
I am proud of the Corps of Non-Commissioned Officers and will at all times conduct myself so as to bring credit upon the Corps, the military service, and my country regardless of the situation in which I find myself. Operations are the heart of all Army organizations. Sergeants Major understand the mission command philosophy. We apply these principles to develop leaders, increasing the effectiveness of planning and operations.
I will not use my grade or position to attain pleasure, profit, or personal safety. Competence is my watchword. My two basic responsibilities will always be uppermost in my mind: accomplishment of my mission and the welfare of my soldiers. I will strive to remain technically and tactically proficient. Sergeants Major understand the importance of readiness. We focus on the key factors of sustainable readiness to optimize our unit's capability and capacity to fulfill known and contingency demands of the operational environment.
I am aware of my role as a non-commissioned officer. I will fulfill my responsibilities inherent in that role. All soldiers are entitled to outstanding leadership. I will provide that leadership. As Sergeants Major, we must be stewards of the profession. We develop agile and adaptive leaders who solve problems using critical and creative thinking to sustain an organizational culture that enables mission command. We are the standard bearers, leading by example through character, competence, and commitment consistent with the Army values.
I know my soldiers, and I will always place their needs above my own. I will communicate consistently with my soldiers and never leave them uninformed. Sergeants Major employ communications techniques and messages to create a positive command environment. We are champions for organizational growth through open and candid communications. We assess and verify information sharing to ensure shared understanding by identifying capability gaps or weaknesses.
I will be fair and impartial when recommending both rewards and punishment. Officers of my unit will have maximum time to accomplish their duties. They will not have to accomplish mine. Sergeants Major develop training management programs within their organizations and prioritize resources to ensure the organization's requirements are met.
I will earn their respect and confidence as well as that of my soldiers. I will be loyal to those with whom I serve, seniors, peers, and subordinates alike. I will exercise initiative by taking appropriate action in the absence of orders. I will not compromise my integrity nor my moral courage.
I will not forget, nor will I allow my contracts to forget, that we are professionals, non-commissioned officers, leaders.
Thank you, Sergeant Major Sellars. It's a great motivating video, wasn't it? It didn't sound like you thought it was very motivating.
Yeah! Motivate us.
If you want, we can bring Sergeant Major of the Army retired Tilly up here again and have him challenge you to contests and make him walk up and down the aisle motivating you. You should be motivated about this, though. You should feel good about it. You know, the leader core competencies give us the opportunity to take a hard look at what we do and align those roles and align those competencies with roles and functions to make sure we're doing the right sorts of things. Go to the next slide, please. As he's going to the slides, I want to show you a quote that we took from a Corps Commanding General. He said, and you heard one of the Sergeant Majors say it, he said, when I see a Command Sergeant Major, I see every enlisted soldier in the organization in formation behind him. Next slide, please. Roles and responsibilities, understanding our functions, understanding what we're supposed to be good at, allows us to be this person, to be this leader. We're going to talk to you about those things today. Now remember what we said in the beginning. We're talking about the roles and functions of a sergeant major and command sergeant major. Surely all of you aspire to be one at some point in time or at some day in your career, but now you are a non-commissioned officer. So you can look at these roles and functions and extrapolate what your roles and functions are. And soon you will be able to see the Army produce doctrine that shows you and tells you what those things ought to be. Is it inclusive of everything you should be and everything you should do? Absolutely not. We would need 10 hours of forum to do that. But you can use this as a guide to demonstrate the things that you want to work on, the things that you know you need to be good on. Hopefully we'll be able to lay that out in a small form for you today, and you'll be able to see the importance of identifying our roles and functions as non-commissioned officers. So go to the next slide, please. Obviously, we're a little bit off of our schedule, but that's okay. We've got plenty of time. Let me give you a couple of admin notes. If you have a question, any question at all, please raise your hand. We're not going to make you get up and move to the mics yet. What we're going to do is pass you a 3x5 card, and you can write your question out on the 3x5 card. Then we'll bring those cards back up here to the front, and we get to the question and answer period. We'll read the questions, give them to the board or the panel members, and they'll be able to provide an answer to you for that particular question. At the end, if we still have time left, then you can get up and move to a mic if you have a question that you weren't able to write down or didn't think of at the time. So I want to tell you again before we begin with the panel members, thank you very much. I ask you to pay attention, think about what they're saying, take it into your heart, make it important to you, and maybe when you walk out of these doors that you can be rejuvenated like we're all rejuvenated. So we're going to begin with Command Sergeant Major Gooden from Training and Doctrine Command.
All right, hey, good morning, Mr. Sparks, thank you very much. Before I get going with my piece on training management, let me talk a little bit about, expound a little bit about what Sergeant Major Sellars was talking about with kind of how this came about, where we're going, and where we plan on going with it. So when I got into my position about 2.5 months ago, not even quite 90 days ago, I happened to be out at the academy. I was there for the graduation, and I asked the commandant. I said, "Hey, what's a question that's burning your mind? What is a concern of yours? What are the students asking? Upon graduation?" And the one thing he told me without hesitating a single bit was that the students, when they graduated, still kind of had that question mark looming. Exactly what are my roles and responsibilities? What are the duties that I'm expected to do when I get to, my battalion as a command sergeant major or as a battalion officer major, whatever it is. And so we started talking about this, and we started having some discussions. I talked with Mr. Sparks and with Sergeant Major Sellars quite a bit about it, and we started coming up with this idea about really, as he talked about, writing down what some of these basic foundational roles and responsibilities are that sergeants majors are expected to do. And the reason that we did decide to start at the sergeant major level was for a couple of reasons. First one, it just happened to be that that's where I asked that question about, hey, how are the students feeling when they come out? So there was kind of like that I won't say that there was anything that we were doing wrong as an NCO cohort or as a sergeant major cohort. I don't think we were doing anything wrong, but we just wanted to make sure that we were able to establish some mission command left and right limits, if you would, kind of make sure that we're walking the path that we're supposed to be walking along, and we have some checks and balances to kind of keep us from getting derailed and going off on tangents, which can happen sometimes. And so that's kind of like what we thought about. And Sergeant Major Sellars immediately with the way that the leader core competencies are being driven into each level of the NCO PDS, we thought that was an excellent way to incorporate roles and responsibilities into Sergeant Major development. So we decided we were going to start at the E9 level, but specifically probably at the initial level of Sergeant Major roles and responsibilities when you come out of the academy at the battalion and the brigade level. Battalion level, obviously, and then the brigade level, kind of sum it up into those two categories of of where those roles and responsibilities really get polished up and honed up for us as sergeant majors as we continue on with our careers, if we are going to continue on. And so we decided we were going to start there. And another reason is, if you think about it, think about when you were young soldiers and who you looked up to, who was kind of like that person or persons in the limelight that you either aspired to be or tried to be or emulated or whatever the fact is. And obviously, for all of us as enlisted, we all probably had that senior NCO, whether it be a first sergeant or a sergeant major at any level, and we looked up to them and we thought, that's the guy or gal I want to be like. What they're doing is right. The way that they look is right. The things that they are doing is the right way to do it. And based off of that, we thought that it was very critical that we start defining this and, if you will, hone these roles and responsibilities down a lot finer at the sergeant major level, so that in the process of doing so, and students graduating from the academy and battalion sergeant majors serving 2 years in their position and really developing their skills and understanding what their roles are, in the process of doing that all the soldiers that they're leading, all those younger enlisted junior NCOs, those sergeants and those staff sergeants, the sergeants first class that are serving as platoon sergeants, and even the first sergeants are watching them and seeing them and saying, that's what I'm supposed to be doing. I get it. I understand what my roles are when I'm a first sergeant. And as that model rolls downhill, if you will, everybody is kind of understanding a little bit better on what we expect them to do, what they should be doing. So that's kind of where we went with this. The one stipulation that I had that Sergeant Major Sellars, Mr. Sparks, and I talked about was that I wanted to, based off of NCO 2020, which for the most part, all those tasks and things that we needed to complete with NCO 2020 for the most part are complete. And we're moving on with continuing that all of those programs. But the one thing that I did want to make sure that we remain tied to was the NCO Creed, in whatever shape, form, or fashion that is. So I wanted to make sure that our leader core competencies, our roles and responsibilities, and everything that we're doing with this agenda was tied to the NCO Creed. As you know, the NCO Creed is the NCO Creed. It's not the Staff Sergeant's Creed or the Platoon Sergeant's Creed or the First Sergeant's Creed. It's the creed for all of us as non-commissioned officers, and therefore, it does sum up very well our duties should be, where we should be focusing on, but it does it pretty generically as a bigger foundation. But it serves for a good base at all ranks in all duty positions, and that's why I wanted to keep tied to it. And we will just continue to refine and hone those roles and responsibilities as we stay tied to the NCO Creed in all of this that we do. And so, obviously, with Sergeant Major Sellars and the Non-Commissioned Officer Leadership Center of Excellence being the center of gravity in this, based off of that is where we are doing all things NCO-like, education-wise, leadership development-wise. They will become and remain and be the center of gravity in all of this as we develop this with Sergeant Major Sellars and his crew out there. But the one thing I do want to impart upon us is that it's not necessarily just waiting for the instructions, if you will, to come around to us. We all understand what the initiative is in this and where we're going with this. And it's going to take every single one of us as NCOs at all levels to really work this and develop this. This isn't a formal tasking or anything like that. I'm just asking, hey, this is, the center of gravity is the NCO Leadership Center of Excellence, but quite honestly, the center of gravity is wherever NCOs are, and the discussions that we as non-commissioned officers should be having in these roles and responsibilities. If there's a group of staff sergeants that are out there in a company or in a battalion or whatever, and they're kind of like, hey, what am I supposed to be doing? Am I supposed to be doing this? Obviously, yes, they can go to their leadership, their first sergeants and their platoon sergeants, but as far as some of the basic basic things that correlate along with the leader core competencies, we would like to be able to have, as you would, the left and right limits kind of established on this so that everybody kind of understands exactly what their basic roles and responsibilities are at each of those leadership positions. Okay, next slide, please. So here's a slice of an example from one of the leader core competencies, training management. This is kind of like tooled out, if you will, from the battalion sergeant major or battalion operations sergeant major, CSM positions. Kind of like, hey, from the training management position, these are some of the things that we think are within your roles and responsibilities from that perspective of it. And the last slide was at the top, and it was also stated in the video about the training management piece in it. It talked about officers in my unit will have maximum time to accomplish their duties. They will not have to accomplish mine. And it goes straight from the NCO creed into the training management piece of it. What we expect us as NCOs to be able to do within our organizations at whatever level we're at, to make sure that we are doing the things that we are supposed to be doing as primary trainers, as managers of programs such as training, to make sure that we are accomplishing those duties, because we know that those duties still have to get done regardless of who does them, but we want to ensure that we are the ones that primarily understand it is our duty to do them. So I'm going to pick out a few of them here real quick and talk just real briefly, and then we'll move on so we can get going on with this panel. But if you take commander's intent and mission requirements and soldiers' abilities, it's important for us to remain tied in completely with our commander's intent. As a battalion sergeant major, even as a battalion operations sergeant major. And yes, you may have your own initiatives, you may have your own program, you may have your own line of thinking of something that needs to get done, and that's good. That's initiative, that's taking care of NCO business, but you have to really make sure that you don't go off on a tangent. And that's kind of what this is about, with understanding what the mission requirements are, with what the commander's intent is, and then also with your soldiers' abilities. And that ties directly into individual training and collective training at the basic foundational level, because you all know that and we have to be the spokespersons of those things. We have to be able to tell our commanders and the command teams, hey, we're not ready to be able to do this because of whatever skill level training, whatever individual training hasn't been done, whatever collective training event hasn't been able to be accomplished at a certain level yet. You can't just jump into the fire and expect to perform superbly. You have to build yourself up to it, and that's what us as non-commissioned officers, especially at the battalion level, that's what we're expected to do, to be able to look at these things and analyze it. And in order to do that, you have to remain tied in with the training program that has been established. But you have to be a voice in that training program and what is established, and making sure that we are covering the individual training tasks. Understanding that your NCOs that are subordinate to you in the units below you at the company and the platoon level, understanding that they understand what their duties are in ensuring that those individual tasks are looked at and assessed appropriately, and making sure that it is all in line with the commander's intent. And along with assessing and managing the training piece also comes the accountability and the reporting piece of it. And that's why I talked about being the spokesperson and being able to say exactly what you feel or where you feel that the units are in, the battalion is in, as far as the shape of their training regime that they've been doing. Because false reporting doesn't get you anywhere. I mean, you can't have fake news when it comes to training. You've got to be able to tell exactly where you're at, how you stand, and what shape the formation is in order for them to be successful at any mission. And we all know that our soldiers don't want to fail. They want to succeed, but we have to ensure that they're set up for success to accomplish those missions. I talked a little bit about ensuring the implementation of training. So obviously the big one up there on that slide right there is the ACFT. So it's a good example, with the ACFT coming out. We right now, Army, we're in a one-year program right now, a pilot program to test it, to make sure our grading skills are, grading assessments are all appropriate, to make sure that we've got the right equipment, we've got the right locations, we've got the right, we're honing it, we're tuning it down. And you know, who does that fall on? That falls on us as non-commissioned officers. And primarily when it comes to how the ACFT itself is going to be implemented and those types of things, a lot of this is going to be with direction from the battalion level, you know, to the subordinates, to the company level, and figuring those things out. And it's inherent upon the battalion CSM and the battalion operations sergeant major to be deeply involved in that process and making sure that we are getting those things set up for success, so that our soldiers can succeed and be successful at this. So that's just one example of being tied in with what we're expected to do as far as training management. And then I already talked about the individual and the collective training piece of it. The one last piece I'll talk about when it comes to training management is that you know, we have to remember all the time that as we talked about, as I talked about at the beginning with understanding who we are and who's watching us. We're always being watched. I don't care if you're a sergeant. You know, there's members of your team that are always watching you. There's other privates that are always watching to see what you do, and it goes all the way up the chain. You guys understand that. So in that matter, we have to be the standard bearers. We have to be the disciplined enforcers, and we have to establish those things and make sure that. And when it comes to what we call the basics, the foundation of the leader core competencies that will be established and are being established throughout all of the NCO professional development system, that we are the standard bearers and the discipline enforcers and what have you in this program, in ensuring that we do understand what our roles and responsibilities are. And that's why I go back to one of the very first things that I talked about is that, yes, the NCO Leadership Center of Excellence is going to be the center of gravity for this, but really it's incumbent upon all of us as non-commissioned officers to ensure that we are setting those parameters and understanding that our subordinates know exactly what it is that it's expected of them based off of the leader core competencies and some of these left and right limits with training management and so forth. So I'll end at that point right there. I look forward to your questions when we complete this. Thanks for your attention.
Thank you, Sergeant Major. It's difficult to see with the light shining on our eyes up here, so if you have a question, remember what I said. Raise your hand. Sergeant Major Clancy's in the back. Someone will get you a card or something to write with, and then we'll get your questions up here. Just to highlight a couple of things that Sergeant Major Gooden said. You know, the leader core competency of training management is near and dear to the non-commissioned officer's heart. We cannot live in a situation where we find reasons not to train. We've got to find methods and possibilities for training. Because what is the NCO? The NCO is the expert trainer. Now, if you're like us and you can see the front couple rows here, I want to call your attention to the soldiers that are sitting in the front. They're looking at the slides, paying attention, writing things down. They're wanting to be better. That represents our future. That represents sergeants major in the future. And they're looking at how they can do that. The only way that we can aspire and continue to be the best NCO Corps in the world is for us to be experts in training management. That just is a core function of the non-commissioned officer corps. We asked Sergeant Major Grinston, the Forces Command Sergeant Major, to come and talk about operations, readiness, and leadership, those core competencies. Now think about that. A core competency of leadership. What should ping you in the heart more than being a good leader and an expert trainer? Command Sergeant Major Grinston.
Okay, how's everybody doing? Okay, can we get rid of the mood lighting in here? Can we actually turn the lights on? No, seriously.
Good.
Thank you. Okay, there you go. I thought. Okay, a couple of things. First, you got me to sit down while talking. That's amazing. And you've tied me down to a panel. I'm actually really proud to be here today. I just want to tell you, the SMA and Sergeant Major Sparks, or John Sparks, the strength of our Army, if we look around, we talked about the NCOs. And I've never actually gone to a panel in another country where they had all NCOs that could actually come up and talk about their profession. And I'm going to highlight another NCO panel that we have this afternoon for Forces Command for the Total Army Force Policy. And that was actually directed from General Abrams. He said, I want the sergeant majors to talk about the total Army. And that's actually was his panel. And he said, I want you to do it. So I really wanted to highlight that and the importance of what we do. So I'm going to challenge you all to ask questions. I'm going to talk a little bit. I'm going to say some things very specific that I think you need to hear. But I really want to hear what your questions are. What's on your mind? What are you challenged with? What do you disagree with what I'm about to say? I like when people say, Sergeant Major, I disagree with you. I am okay with that. I'm comfortable in my skin. Okay, and I say that because that's the strength of our Army, is that we don't take the status quo. We always try to get better. And if you don't do that, then somebody wants to knock you off the top pedestal. That's just the way I feel. And everybody knows I'm an Alabama football fan. So, roll Tide. Hey, look, if the chief can talk about Boston baseball, okay, I can say, okay. And why do I say that? I say that because you always want to win every year. Okay, for 243 years, the United States Army's wanted to win. And there's always somebody that wants to knock you off that pedestal. And as soon as you don't get the mastering the fundamentals, you don't know about leadership, you don't know about the operations, you don't understand readiness, then somebody's going to knock us off this pedestal. And you don't want us to do that. You don't want us to lose. Okay, so paid announcement, 1500, we're going to do another NCO panel. And I'd encourage you all to be there. Okay, I have 3 topics that I probably could talk about for 3 hours. So there are a few photos and a couple of the leader core competencies up there. I highlighted a few. I'm going to take a few minutes to talk about some things very specific. A lot of times we put words and we say, this is what I want you to do. And sometimes, I guess I'm a little different. I read it and I go, I still don't know what you want me to do. So I looked at it and said, okay, enlisted talent management. I want you to do that. Okay, who says they have not been doing talent management since you've been in the Army? Okay, or you haven't been doing talent management? Or you have? Am I talking too fast? I know, I'm funny. Okay, I got it. But what I'm saying, you've done it the whole time, but why all of a sudden we put that leader core competency up there and we say, well, I'll help you explain this. So if you're a Corps Sergeant Major, I expect you to manage the talent at the brigade Sergeant Major level. Who is your number 1 brigade CSM? And who are you talking to? Who are you telling about your number 1 brigade CSM? It should be the people on this row right here. Because we talk about we got talented people, but do we actually manage the talent? All the way down. I'll give you an example. Emmons. Go ahead, stand up. How many months time and grade in service do you have? About 16 months. Okay, sit down. 16 months. Anybody know why that's special, that he's a specialist? This is shocking. Sergeant Major, somebody raise your hand. No, seriously. Sergeant Major Jenkins, thank you. She knows. So we talk about how do we manage talent. The time in service to be a specialist is 18 months. The only person that can waive time in service and time in grade to a specialist, for him to get promoted to specialist, is the Chief of Staff of the Army. So brigade and Corps Sergeant Majors, you see this slide and you say, I manage talent. I told you go 2 levels down, you talk about brigade, but it goes all the way down. It's shocking. When Emmons came to me and he was a PFC on the Force Com board, and I said, why are you PFC? Why didn't you challenge it? Why did you say, this is the best soldier I've got in the Corps, in the division? How can I get promoted? How do we say we want to manage talent as a Corps and a Brigade Sergeant Major? or division sergeant major. If you, well, sergeant major, the regulation says, okay, I acknowledge that. I expect you to manage talent at the corps division at the nominative level, and you say, hey, we have an outstanding soldier, we need to get him promoted. You got to do the same for your brigade sergeant majors. You got to go all the way down to every soldier in your formation. And I acknowledge, okay, you got 35, 50,000 people in a corps. So how do you do that? Well, when you recognize it, you got to not accept no. Well, you know, is there a clause? And keep running it up. And geez, why give up? Why? You say, well, you know, that's just the way it is. If you're a corps and a division sergeant major, and you're actually managing talent, in my opinion, if it's something in the reg that you disagree with, and it's for the good of the Army, I expect you to manage that talent and challenge that regulation. Okay, that's what I call that crazy thing called leadership. The second one I've got up there is extending the influence inside and outside the organization. And again, I look and say, well, how do I do that? So I believe we have sponsorship, and I think you all understand as sponsors. And then what do? But I think we do great at sponsorship when you receive people to your organization. So extending influence is how well do you do when the soldiers leave your organization? And who's in charge of that process? If you're the senior mission command authority at your installation, that is your responsibility. And in my opinion, you extend your influence by sending great soldiers to other places. And don't send terrible soldiers to other places. Like, man, I can't wait to get rid of that one. Okay, but you have to look at those programs like out-processing to actually help you extend your influence. But you also, remember how I said managing talent and being a leader? You have to talk to other people at different echelons to say, hey, I disagree with this. And then you got to bring your friends to help. Don't wait till you failed miserably before you call the Force Comm Sergeant Major or your corps or division. You beat your head, you want to do it all right, and I acknowledge that you want to do it. But you have people that want to help you. And I'm going to tell you, it's very rare that I actually get called that says, hey, Sergeant Major, I need help from a corps or division Sergeant Major. Now, either good news is they're doing it all and they're doing great things, or they just let it go and said, oh, I couldn't get it done. I don't know, but I challenge you to ask that. Okay, next slide. Operations. And one thing Sergeant Major Sellars says, he said, I don't want to tell you exactly how to do your job, and because you know how to do that. I slightly disagree. I think that at some point we actually need to talk more about where your duties and responsibilities are very specifically. We talk about gaps. I'll give you one quick vignette about a gap. But you don't know. If we don't talk specifically about how you identify a gap. I was a brigade CSM, and I was in my mission rehearsal exercise to deploy on one of many deployments. And we're sitting there, and the unit kept saying, we don't have any food. We just, we don't have food. And I talked to the BSB, and the BSB says, hey, we just did a supply run. We just brought meals ready to eat. And he said, okay. So I said, I don't know what's going on. They keep telling me they don't have food. The BSB says they just did the log pack. I don't understand. So I went down. Sergeant Majors, sometimes at the appropriate level, you need to go down and see for yourself what is going on, and then you might identify a gap. Well, I identified the gap. The rocket came in, hit the CK, knocked out all the food, and they were eating MREs, 3 meals a day. What do you think the ration cycle the BSB thought they were on? Hot meal A, MRE, hot meal. So they delivered 1 MRE a day. That's exactly what the unit was eating. So to identify a gap, in my opinion, sometimes at all levels, you need to get out of your office and go down and see what is actually happening on the ground. At all levels. Get out of the meeting. And then you will go find some gaps in your organization. It's up there. But you got to pull yourself away. Okay. SOPs. I think in the operations process, we need to tie a couple things together. Troop leading procedures, the MDMP process, and the 8-step training model. Those almost, to me, are synonymous. If you looked at it, you could actually take the 8-step training model and put troop leading procedures beside it, and you're going to see some very similar activities. But as shocking as it was, that when we asked all the soldiers on the Soldier of the Year board, what was the 8-step training model? Now, I don't want to really, I know, I got it. I may just sing the Army song. Okay, and no one knew. So when you talk about operations and you don't even know the models, that means, are we actually doing those models? Are we going down and asking, what's the process? What's step 2 of the 8-step training model? And how does that correlate to troop leading procedures? If you looked at it, I think you'll find some gaps that you can identify. And that last slide. Readiness. You heard the Secretary of the Army at the breakfast talk about readiness. You've heard the Chief of Staff of the Army talk about readiness. We've talked about readiness and how do we manage that for a very long time. I will ask a favor. Please change your narrative just a tad. Every time you talk about readiness, I really want you to talk about 2 things. There is a non-available, non-deployable readiness, and we're doing great at that. But we also need to acknowledge that people will actually leave the military, people will PCS, and they have to go to the professional military education. That is another 10 to 15%. We don't talk about it. And I'm not saying they're not available, they're not ready. So if the balloon goes up and we all go to war, everything stops and we all go. But until then, we still have to send people to school, and that is another 10 to 15% of the folks. So every time we get you to 105%, there's going to be 10% non-available, non-deployables. Then there's another 10 to 15% that's going to have to PCS and go to school. That actually, it is helping our readiness. You have to send your people to school. We need as many sergeants as we can get right now, but I need you all to talk to everybody about this, because sometimes we don't acknowledge that our numbers are a little bit smaller. And it's not because they're not ready. It's just that that's how the Army is, and we forgot about that. Okay. There are a couple other things I'm sure that we'll have questions on there when we talk about readiness on that slide, but I don't want to take any more time because I'm actually excited to get to the questions.
Thank you, Sergeant Major. The Sergeant Major said a couple things that bear our attention. Everything he said bears our attention, but he said challenge systems. How often do you hear a senior Sergeant Major tell you to challenge the system? It's an incredible thing to think about. He's telling you to get involved, figure out what the problem is, and challenge it. I love, great points, Sergeant Major. Then the second thing that I wrote down that I really thought was a great thing for him to say, he's talking about senior sergeants major, and he says, be the guy on the ground that really knows what's going on. That's pretty powerful. Those are powerful things for non-commissioned officers to know about. I asked Sergeant Major Mansker if he would come and talk to 2 leader core competencies of program management and communication. We think about program management, it's a term that resonates in the Army, it resonates outside of the Army, but it really means non-commissioned officers run things. They run programs, they establish programs, they make things happen in organizations. So pay attention, Sergeant Major Mansker, program management and communications.
All right. Hey, thanks, John. SMA. Hey, first of all, this is a slide up front. We all use this slide and talk about we're the backbone of the Army, but I just tell you, if you're in this room and you don't have passion about what we do, this doesn't come naturally. Enthusiasm that you're a non-commissioned officer without knowledge equals no capability. You are the pace setter and the capability for an organization. You're either good, bad, people below you, or really to your lateral to your sides is good as well. I tell you, You know, one of the things I find commonly, everyone in this room is competitive. But everyone in this room needs not be in competition with one another. We should be growing each other every single opportunity we have. If we don't do that, we are not professionals. We are not a profession. We are a bunch of individuals trying to do our best to succeed. If you don't think that doesn't mean something, I know somebody in this room has talked about somebody else today negatively in this room, and they're unwilling and incapable to tell them to their face. So if you can't do it, you should stop talking. Because I'm going to be the first one to tell you, you know, talking without knowledge is ignorance. Enthusiasm without knowledge is a cheerleader. Are you it? Come on. Everybody in this room should be a little bit pissed off. I just told you. You're either a cheerleader or you're ignorant right now. Or you're great. The people in this room are not battalion sergeant majors generally. There's probably a few in here. There's not brigades really in here. You are the senior sergeant majors. Are you growing? Are you growing the people below you? So I ask you the first question. Do you even know what the leadership core competencies are? Because most of you cannot recite it. You talk about eight-step training model. Can you even talk about your profession, your core competencies of your profession, okay? So I love that first slide. You don't get a freebie just because you're a non-commissioned officer. You become the backbone. That's what I'm trying to tell you. All right, next slide. Hey, I'm not going to talk every one of these, and we are going to share these with you. But just remember, everything we're talking about here is truly a baseline of knowledge. You know, I talked about ignorance, right? Get your baselines right, and are you penetrating the force below you to understand this as well? We do a whole lot of time. We talk about, part of my challenge is sometimes we debate a whole lot of policy. I'll just tell you, your job is not to debate policy, not to accept status quo. Your job is to enforce policy. And that's what you ought to take it as a non-commissioned officer and be that person that makes a difference in somebody else's life. And our Army makes our Army great. And when it's wrong, push back. Do what's wrong. You know, Sir Major Grinston actually taught quite a few things on my slide. But that's okay, because this leadership is not by six core competency. Leadership is holistically. You have to do all of these. They're all integrated and synchronized together. They have to be. Okay? So the first slide, the first thing up there, Sir Major Grinston talked about, first bullet up there. And I just use it very simple. I simplify this real quickly, and I call it go to grow. If you're holding on to people and not allowing them to grow, you're really hurting our Army. You got to let them go to school. But oftentimes when we think go to grow, we think very small. We think about NCOPDS only. It is assignments, talent management, taking people out of their comfort zones, put them where they need to be to grow. Hey, if you're still training a mechanic as a sergeant major, mechanics stop turning wrenches. You don't need to turn wrenches as a sergeant major. Your job is to manage, to lead. Okay, I find it myself. I tell people stop turning wrenches. I'm a maintenance person by choice. You know, it is. I'm ordnance proud, but I'm a non-commissioned officer first. The second bullet, and I kind of already told you what this is. Hey, if you don't read that second bullet and understand this simple, what I'm going to put it at, you are the pace setter. You determine the resources, and the time, and the effort, and the priorities in order to meet the commander's intent. Simplified. Your job is to enable commander's intent. Okay? I should have said this up front, but you know, the word program management, I would offer to say 90% in this room are trying to find out what this has to do with a non-commissioned officer. Because the first thing you think is program management, some of you probably raise your hand and know what PMP is. It's not a certification. It's not go to school and learn. It's about leading. It's about leading and enabling and empowering others, assigning responsibility, not advocating accountability to this, okay? You've got to do it. We've got to get much better at this. Next slide, please. Hey, you know, this top one's kind of sensitive to me. Not sensitive, but I'm kind of passionate about it. We do way too much problem identification and not a lot of problem solving. If you want your officers or your commanders that you work for to solve your problems, I would offer your value to that command and to this Army is minimized. Solve problems. Understand the intent, understand the risk, and understand when every one in this room is empowered. Do it. Understand the risk. Don't get ahead of your boss. Don't get left of your boss or right of your boss either. But really, hey, don't bring it to your boss. I haven't met a commander that's not busy. I just haven't met one. So we should maximize, as we talk about maximizing time, we should maximize our boss's time as well. And we, hit them when you need to. And I'm going to talk, the next slide is going to be communication, but I'm going to talk a little about communication. So I'm going to go down to the third one. I often find this is critically important to us, is when you ask somebody, to list out their priorities, and if they look anything different than the commander's priorities, or the unit's priorities, or the Army's priorities, you're probably already in a wrong place, okay? You're no longer leading as a team. You're leading as an individual in personal nature. You got to figure that out. I have a personal problem because I've been asked, hey, what are your priorities? It's really easy. There are 3 priorities in the Army. Those are my priorities, and the boss has, ones that obviously enable those. Hey, the second to last one, do you know the history of your unit? Do you know the history of this Army? I tell you, if you don't talk about it and teach young soldiers about it, our history fades. Everybody can count how many years before when the Army was formed. Everybody can count, right? Well, except mechanics. Okay? If you don't know the history of your organization, you're not able to, that's part of your pride of your organization. Instill the pride, and it starts with the history of your organization. You got to get there. Quit counting how many years it was. That's great. It has been a long time. Everybody can probably talk about von Steuben and all that stuff. But what else has your unit done in combat operations or relief efforts, HADR type stuff? What have they done, okay? You have to put that in your system somewhere. Look, in order to have legacy, you must know history. If you don't know history, you have no legacy, okay? Next slide, please. Okay, communications is one of my big ones, and I really talk to you about this because I think this kind of goes back to what I talked about. In order to communicate effectively, we really must have knowledge, and it starts at the very highest levels. You got to listen to what the secretary says and the chief says. Sometimes you got to know what the newspaper, sometimes Army Times even. You got to know what the message is in order to relay it, empower and trust, and give knowledge to your subordinates. You have to do that. But I tell you, sometimes we are not very good at translating the bigger strategic messaging. Sergeant Major Grinston talked about readiness. I love asking sergeant majors or any really non-commissioned officers, explain to me what readiness is. And what I find is very myopic. It usually starts with med-pros. And I say, well, that's an element of readiness. But readiness, we got to stop using the words without knowledge and understanding. Because when you're leading formations and you say, no, readiness is #1 priority, nobody moved. Nobody did anything. Nobody acted. Nobody reacted. Nobody did anything. They just said, readiness is #1 priority. They repeated what you said. Great, thanks. Oh, I really didn't need you right about that time. Okay? Hey, I tell you, if you're sitting in this room, your messaging has to change. You have to be very dynamic in your messaging without changing the message. You got to be able to talk at echelon. I find this way too many times. We either talk very tactical at the strategic level, and they're not listening too much. I'll just be honest with you. You got to be able to translate it and get it where they understand it. They understand the importance of what you're telling them. But all the way down to the lowest level, you have to message correctly. And when you never miss the opportunity to communicate your message. Never. We all have visitors. We all have people that walk through our motor pools, what have you. If you miss an opportunity to tell the message, you really miss the opportunity to tell your story and what you need as an organization, what this Army needs. If you think creative thinking starts in the Pentagon, you're probably wrong. Innovative thinking it's got to start with you. It's got to start at the lowest levels. Nobody knows what you need more than you do. And if you don't message it properly, you're going to get policy that's just counterintuitive to what you really desire, right? Okay. Hey, I'm not going to cover the last slide. Well, no, I'm not going to cover it. Hey, we're going to get on to questions, but I really just, my thing here is this has got to be about passion. If you are the backbone, you got to have knowledge with it, okay? So look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Sergeant Major. It's not too late to get write out your questions. I see some cards floating around there. Just get them to the center. We'll get them picked up, and we'll get them up here, and we'll answer as many as we can. Okay, the first question. I'm not going to read your names off. I'm just going to read the question. PT for a long time was a place where non-commissioned officer leadership could display and model the standard for lower enlisted soldiers. With the new ACFT, we are possibly taking that experience advantage from our NCOs. What steps can be taken to ensure NCOs retain that level of leadership during this transition? Because it appears they will be learning right alongside the soldiers they are supposed to be leading. I'll give that question to Sergeant Major Grinston.
Okay, John.
Didn't he?
You gotta,
He said
you
he
gotta
wanted
tell
all
me
the
that's
questions.
my question before you hand it. No, I'm just joking. So I believe the question is, we're going to take the APFT and we're going to learn the exact same time while we're doing the ACFT. What did we do when we changed the PT manual like 15 years ago that nobody read?
PRT.
Yeah, right? So the PRT. So this isn't the first time we've actually changed what we've done. And we said, well, but Sergeant Major, now I have to learn alongside my soldiers on how the ACFT is going. So you're the leader. We change organizations all the time. I need you to lead and do probably some professional development. To me, this is a battalion sergeant major, and I did this as a Force Com sergeant major. I laid out the ACFT, and they said, Sergeant Major, it's not out yet. I said, thank you. I appreciate your comments. So I did, and I said, but let's do a leader development session in my organization as a non-commissioned officer because we have a change, and I want them to understand the intent on how we lead through change. And as a non-commissioned officer, you are responsible for individual, small team, and crew training. This is a change in that training event. You need to do some leader development, and you are still in charge of that event. And basically, it's really not that different than the old one. Okay, so you do some deadlifts. There are 8 tasks. It's just, I'm sorry, 6 tasks. Depends on how you look at it. So, but you got to fundamentally go with a leader development program. You're still in charge of those individual tasks. Then do it and then execute. And it's nobody else's responsibility. If you give your authority away, it will be gone. And so I disagree that you're going to have to learn with everybody else. I don't think you're going to do a leader development. You're going to do the ACFT. You're still in charge. Develop a plan and execute that individual small team and training. Okay. I think I answered that.
Thank you, Sergeant Major.
If I didn't, you can raise your hand and yell at me.
Wait till we get closer to the end.
Nobody raised their hand. Okay, good.
Okay, the next question. You mentioned that last year's students from the Sergeant Major course missed what their roles and responsibilities are at the Command Sergeant Major and the Sergeant Major level. A very valid question. I think it is great that you develop roles and responsibilities specifically for Sergeants Major. Do you have in hand the roles and responsibilities out for future Sergeant Majors, or do you implement these as teaching topics in the Sergeant Major course? This is the way you teach, talk, and discuss them. Sergeant Major Sellars.
So that's a great question. So, one of the things that we did as we outlined this is make sure that we're going to go back and put it inside the NCO guide. But just last week or earlier this week, I put it out to all the instructors in the academy so they can start talking about this and introducing it the same way that the panel members also doing as well to include the video. But I think part of the problem is that I identified with Class 68 is that they came in with a whole lot of experience. We gave them the education, but what they truly lacked was some initiative. They just lack the initiative. So some of these things that we're talking about right now, it kind of boils down to that. It boils down to just taking the initiative to understand the commander's intent and figuring out how you support their initiatives and not have your own priorities. So I think it's a simple problem to solve. As I led into this opening discussion, one of the things I didn't want to tell you how to do is do your job. I just think it goes back to taking the initiative and understanding your roles and responsibilities and then be able to lead from the front. Their motto was clearly by example. And they led by example on a daily basis, but they didn't lead by example on taking the initiative to do some of these things and understand it in terms of the knowledge base and the capabilities and the capacities. So I'm going to throw one thing out to you before we move on to the next question. And it kind of gets after readiness and thinking about what we're supposed to be doing as a non-commissioned officer corps. So how well do we prepare soldiers to attend the basic leader course? How well do we actually do that? Let me give you some facts and figures, ladies and gentlemen. This year, we had 42,974 soldiers attend the basic leader course. Of that, 39,725 graduated. That's a delta of 3,249 people that failed the course, due to a majority of 18 to 20% of that was failed the physical fitness test. Basic skill job number 1. That's what we're supposed to be able to do every single day when we wake up at 6:30 in the morning. So we increased our capability and we increased our capacity, but we still fell short by 3,000 soldiers. So we're going to try to do it again this year. We just started out FY19, and this time next year we're going to have the same kind of discussion. How well did we do? At the sergeant major level, what programs are you managing to ensure that we're increasing capabilities so soldiers go to school and be able to pass it? In the institution environment, it is not our responsibility to give them a negative 1059 and send them about their way, and so you can chapter them out of the Army. You're supposed to be able to pick that up before they come to the course, that they can't pass the PT test. So we still got some gaps out there. We're not identifying the gaps in the senior leaders to figure out what soldiers should be going to school and what soldiers shouldn't be going to school. Because PME is not a given right, it's earned. So I think we got to do a little bit better job in that and figuring that out. And so to this question, just making sure that we go back and identify the roles and responsibilities. You know, program management. What program do we have to set in place to prepare our soldiers to attend every level of PME? And I'll just pause there for effect.
Thanks, Sergeant. Sergeant Gooden, please.
Okay, so this is the question that I have, and it states, the Secretary of the Army mentioned yesterday about eliminating excess admin requirements and paperwork. And on Friday, something about Friday, something safety briefs. My question is, have the units followed this guidance, and are they hanging on to these requirements? Okay, well, I mean, that's a great question, but I'll throw that back at the audience. I mean, you guys tell us, are the commanders still hanging on? So the Secretary has released in sequence certain programs that he is eliminating, that he has established that are time-consuming, irrelevant, not needed. Add your flavor in there, and that goes all the way down to the lowest level of command. So I don't know. You guys tell us. Are commanders going along with this guidance and getting rid of these requirements, or are they still hanging on to them like they still need to assess off of them or train off of them or whatever it is? And I'm sure that the Sergeant Major that's sitting right next to my left, your right, would probably be pretty interested in this also. But really, for all of us. You know, what exactly is not being disregarded that we were told to? Anybody?
Got a hand.
Okay, well, my comment to that would be, but this is something that the Secretary has signed off in saying that he's eliminating, so what's the question? You know, so what's the debate? I don't know.
Anybody else have anything they'd like to add to that? All right, Sergeant Mansker, please.
Hey, I'm going to read the question to you. It basically states the Sergeant Major and the CSM at the first echelon of leadership as a Sergeant Major are provided as staff. Let me correct that. You don't have a staff. Your commander has a staff. Okay? And you are part of the staff. You don't have a staff. And if you do, you're wrong. Okay? So if somebody's carrying your bags, somebody's writing your letters, probably wrong, okay? Let's get that up front. But I would think really what the question you were really asking was how do you use the staff? I tell you, my personal thoughts are, I was a brigade ops sergeant major before I was a CSM, and what it really taught me was how the staff, if you give the staff the responsibility through the commander, and they always should be focused on subordinate organizations and making the subordinate organizations' capability and ability to meet the requirements of the commander. That's where it should be focused. If you find the staff focused on the headquarters only, you're not going to do well. Okay? The staff needs to be focused down and given the ability. What can they take away from the subordinate organizations? Why request a report from a subordinate organization when you already have access to the data? It's silliness, right? It's called, we just talked about taskings and extra things we do. It really, I just tell you, and when you have a staff that's focused on enabling subordinate organizations, you'll be a great organization. That's my personal thoughts on it. But and a couple other things on here said track training. Yes, you'll do that. Managed readiness. Yes, you'll do that. Okay. I don't know what other questions you have there, but let's start with you don't have a staff. It's not your staff. It's the commander's staff. It's the unit staff, and they need to be focused on the subordinate organizations, not on you. Okay. Good. They're not your PAC clerk. Okay. Got it. Thanks.
Can I?
Yeah, go ahead.
I want to tag in onto that question right there. You know, if you're staying in line with your commander's intent and your commander's priorities, that's exactly what the staff is doing, and they're supporting those things right there. And if you're staying in line with that, then the things that are important to you are going to be going right in lockstep with what the commander is suggesting is being done and with what the staff is supporting the commander on. Here's where we get in trouble as non-commissioned officers. When we get that good idea fairy flying around our head, and we got this good idea that we want to solve and take on, we think it deserves a lot of attention and effort, and we start kind of going off on our own sergeant major tangent. And we start wandering a little bit too far outside of the left and right limits, the commander's priorities, so to say. And soon we find ourselves as Lone Wolf McQuaid out there all by ourselves, kind of operating on our own RTEP. And when we try to bring in support, i.e. through the staff NCOs, we find that we start coming into conflict because the staff NCOs are, guess what? They're already working on things that are important to the commander in order to support the 3 or the XO or whoever it is. And so when you interject with your own kind of thoughts and ideas, you kind of throw a monkey wrench into the whole system, and you start creating unnecessary conflict that is not necessarily needed at all. And it's not a good, healthy command climate, and it doesn't keep the command moving in the same direction or in the direction that the commander intends for it to be moving. So be very careful about those things that you think are so-called sergeant major initiatives or whatever. They're fine as long as it's in line with your commander's intent and priorities in the direction that everything's moving. But the minute that you start going a little bit too far left or right, you're going to start wandering into some dangerous waters, and it's going to hard to get back on track.
Thanks, Sergeant Major. Sergeant Major Princeton?
Okay, so the question is, how do I say no? I think there was actually 4 questions on this card. I'm going to address 2. So it says, how do I tactfully say no? You can just say no. I'm sorry, tactfully. So that's one way. Sorry, next question. Okay, so actually I'm going to break it down at 2 levels, if that's okay. I'm going to say at the senior level, I don't think we articulate well with how to say no. It's actually, you say yes. It's pretty simple. I'll give you one very specific example. I was a brigade sergeant major. I like giving good examples, right? It's a battalion sergeant major came up to me. I want a WTU sergeant major. I needed a staff sergeant for the WTU. And we were required to send a staff sergeant to the WTU. I assigned the task to a battalion. And the battalion sergeant major come in my office, and he's flaming hot, he's mad, and said, I don't have any staff sergeants. What? I said, you mean to tell me you don't have any staff sergeants in your battalion? Well, Sergeant Major, you can't take any staff sergeants from my battalion. Oh, yes, I can. I'll reassign them every one of them tomorrow. Now get out of my office. So, next question. Okay, so did he say no the appropriate way? So this is a very important, thing. This is actually about trust and how to establish priorities. So he didn't trust that if he gave me the appropriate priorities in his battalion, that I would make the appropriate decision. Because I know he had everybody knows he had a staff sergeant, at least in one in that battalion, right? So he could have given somebody. So it goes something like this. Sergeant Major, this is what he should have said. Sergeant Major, I have 18 of 36 staff sergeants in my organization. So I have 18 sergeants filling those squads. I can absolutely give you one. That would be 17. 2 of them are PCSing. One's going to drill sergeant school. But I can gladly give you one if you want me to be at 33% strength in my organization for staff sergeants. And then he's got to trust that I will make the appropriate decision for all the right reasons. But he didn't do any of that, and he frustrated everybody because we knew he had somebody, but he didn't articulate that the right way. So that's how I believe a sergeant major should actually say tactfully, no, I can't do that, but here's what that decision will do to my organization. That is appropriate at every level. Take, the grade plate reduction that I got. I said, yeah, we can absolutely do that. We'll have to take 150 staff sergeants that will be high risk for the organization. If you're willing to roll down those positions to skill level 1 and have 147 high risk folks go from staff sergeants to skill level 1, we can absolutely do it. Are you willing to sign off on that risk? That's actually how the conversation goes. Now at the soldier level, I think it's at the staff sergeant, platoon sergeant level, it's just a little different. Sometimes you just stop sending your folks to other people to take care of them. So the second part of this question was, if I have a soldier, if somebody tells you no, who are these people? And like Sergeant Major, the SEAC, Gainey said, if you can't tell me yes, you can't tell me no. So a lot of times at your level, I call it the squad leader and sergeant. The squad leader cannot approve you going to airborne school, but he'll say, you can't go. Get out. Don't do the packing. And you just go, okay. Right? Why do you accept that? He doesn't approve that. If it's good for the Army, you need to take it to somebody that can actually approve that action. It's normally not your school's guy. So if the school guy says no, did you go, if it's good for you, if you're a platoon sergeant and one of your soldiers needs to go to a school, why didn't you take that to the battalion sergeant major? And why didn't you take it to the brigade? That's what I expect of a platoon sergeant and a first sergeant in the United States Army. So don't just take no from somebody that can't tell you yes. And that was 2 questions answered on 1 card.
Thank you, Sergeant Major. Sergeant Major Sellars.
Okay, so the question is there a plan to align NCOES with Officer Professional Development, i.e. USASMA, aligned with the War College, MLC, aligned with our ILE? Okay, so the first thing I want to ask is, how many people have read the NCO 2020 strategy?
I think I did.
Okay, so here we go. Again, and we're going on year 4 of the strategy being produced. And we got less than 10% of the audience that have read that document. It's only 13 pages.
13.
I think I sound like a tape recorder up here. So NCOES no longer exists. Please, ladies and gentlemen, pick up the document. We've gone through this 1,000 times. NCOPDS replaced NCOES. And we wonder why soldiers at the lowest level don't understand what's going on in the Army, because here at the senior level, we don't even read. I encourage you, ladies and gentlemen, close the door for at least an hour every day, and pick up a book. Pick up the NCO 2020 strategy, pick up something, doctrine, and read it, so that you can stay attuned to what the changes that's going on. This is a fast-moving train, and if you're not on board, you're going to be left behind. You're going to be left looking at the train as it's leaving the station. So we went away from that about 4 years ago. It's almost 4 years. In about 60 days, it will be 4 years exactly, because I read the document. USASMA. So we're no longer called USASMA. I just want to take the time to explain that. Several different times, John Sparks has stood up here and called us the NCO Leadership Center of Excellence. Underneath the NCO Leadership Center of Excellence, there is a school. It is called the Sergeant's Major Course, and there's 2 branches of the course. One of them is the Sergeant Major Course Resident, and the other one is the Distant Learning Course, okay? And we're not going to be anywhere closely aligned to the War College. We are going to be accredited in about 21 days, but who's counting? About 21 days underneath the Higher Learning Commission, underneath the Command and Staff General College. And that's where the alignment is coming from an academic governance perspective. Okay? So is that clear? I just want to make sure. But it first starts with going back to your home stations and picking up the NCO 2020 strategy. Actually, you can Google it right now, pull it up, and see the 13 pages. And there's some pictures that make it very, very simple for you. So you can kind of tie the pictures into the words, and then it'll be clearly understood. But we have to get better at this, ladies and gentlemen. So next year when we come back, every hand up here should go up and say, NCO 2020 strategy, who's read it? Everybody should be reading it. And kind of go back. So there's 3 lines of effort contained within the NCO 2020 strategy. That'd be the first question that we ask next time, okay?
All right, thank you, Sergeant Major. Sergeant Major Gooden, please.
And I would tell you if you pull it up, you can actually have it read before you walk out of either of those doors. Here's a question that has pretty much already been answered. Sergeant Major Grinson answered this with his last comments, but I'm going to bring it up real quick and just talk about it very quickly, and we'll be done. As a soldier, when referring to NCOES schools, at what point does it become acceptable to reach out to higher after exhausting your immediate chain of command with no results? So I would tell you that exactly what Sergeant Major Grinson said. This is right in the wheelhouse of what platoon sergeants and first sergeants are supposed to be doing, in managing the talent, ensuring that soldiers are going to school when they're supposed to be going to school, and not just thinking, it shouldn't be that soldiers are just thinking that it's left up to them to manage their careers and their education and schedule the training and the schooling and all that kind of stuff. And this goes back to the entire concept of what this forum, this panel is all about, with understanding roles and responsibilities. With a question like that, it's obvious to me that there are platoon sergeants and first sergeants out there who don't understand what their roles and responsibilities are in ensuring that their soldiers are set up for success, getting them to school on time, telling them that they're going to school, inspecting, planning, the whole 9 yards, counseling, mentoring, leader development. Those are all nice words and phrases to talk about it, but if you're not actually doing it, it means nothing. It's exactly what Sergeant Major Mansker was talking about before. You have to put some action behind your words, and you have to have some meat on the bones when it comes to these roles and responsibilities. You can't just say, I'm the staff sergeant and I'm the squad leader and expect that to carry you out for the rest of your career, because that's not going to cut it. As a staff sergeant, you have to be out there performing. As a platoon sergeant, you have to be out there performing. So I answered that question going off of the response that Sergeant Major Grinson already gave in answering that question. But I just wanted to emphasize how important this is on us as non-commissioned officers, showing what right looks like, and forcing this as we develop and mentor our subordinate NCOs in understanding what their roles and responsibilities are as that rolls downhill. It is very important for platoon sergeants and first sergeants to understand that it is completely within their wheelhouse and within their realm of responsibility to ensure that their soldiers know exactly when they're going to go to school based off of their merit and their abilities and everything else. Thank you.
Sergeant Major Mansker. Thanks, Sergeant Major.
All right, I'm the last question. Hey, where's the AWG, Sergeant Major, at? Where are you at? Okay. Stand up. Oh, you are. That was just hateful. Hey, you got to have a little humility and you got to be a little
That's
bit.
AG. AG will go off on you.
It's all good. Hey, I'm gonna start the question, then I'm gonna let you pile on. Okay. Yeah, and so his question really is, and it kind of goes back to what I talked about earlier, but the question really is, what are we doing as an institution where the NCO Corps is part of lethality, or they are lethality? And I'm going to tell you there's two things, the way I see this. One is know our profession. Two is understand our equipment and its capabilities so you can employ it properly, which we suffer with at times. And that's everything from the ability to PMCS it, to troubleshoot it, to employ it, to recover it, and all those other things. It's all encompassing. But the NCO is, when we think lethality, we always think bullets, tanks, guns. We don't think of you. You are part of lethality. So with that, jump. Great.
He wants you to move to a microphone.
Yeah, I can't. We're only catching about every third word. We're old.
So I keep hearing that, Sergeant Majors, that we are the most lethal fighting force, and we are. We are. If we get in front of an enemy, we'll start making widows and orphans in a second. But I got to tell you, lethality has a shelf life, and it comes with an expiration date. As non-commissioned officers, and I see them with 282 in the fight for Mosul, we are lethal. Our squad leaders are lethal, and they're trying, and they're adhering to the core competencies. But there is a problem. He who studies evil is being studied by evil, and our enemies are paying very close attention. The Russians are getting closer. They're not there yet. They're not a giant. They're 5'8". But 2 years later, they were 5'6". During the invasion of Georgia, they were 5'1". And then in Crimea, they became kind of taller. So, with that being said, let me bring it back to the tactical level, from the strategic to the operational and tactical level. Those guys are able to operate in their National Training Center, the Russians. We call it Syria. They call it their NTC. When they can operate with impunity across the whole spectrum of war, when their units can exercise cyber warfare at the battalion level, and at the brigade level, to the point that they annihilated a Ukrainian brigade in under 3 minutes at the opening of the Crimean War. That is the flexibility our commanders and non-commissioned officers don't have. I say that it is harder for an NCO to clear range control than Mount City, Sugar Gordon, and GRTC. So our guys are trying, our guys are lethal, our guys and gals in combat are exceptionally proficient. I want to know what is in the mind of your bosses to ensure that lethality has no expiration date in the American Army. I really don't want to know about safety briefings or any of that stuff. That is not important right now.
I got it.
So that's it.
I'll answer your question. You said what is in the mind of our bosses on how do we get more lethal? It's pretty easy. It's the number 6 priority of the Chief of Staff of the Army. It's soldier lethality. There are 6 modernization priorities for the Chief of Staff of the Army. Number 1 is long-range precision fires, and number 6 is soldier lethality. We have a cross-functional team that looks at this problem set every day, and we've already actually looked at models on how this is going to look like. You know, we're going to take the mental, some mindfulness in that. There's some physical, and then there are the weapons, and how do they incorporate those weapons? And that's what the cross-functional team within the Chief of Staff's priorities, that's why it's actually a priority for the future and for modernization. Does that answer your question? I don't know how to answer that any other way, that it's a priority of the Army. I could give you like 4 hours if you want me to keep talking about it, but you shook your head like I didn't answer your question.
Well, I'd love to talk more about it, Sergeant Major. I mean,
yeah, but
actually,
we're out of time, so I'm asking you, did I answer your question?
To a certain degree, Sergeant Major, for the amount of time.
Let's do this. After, we've only got a few more minutes, so please come on forward afterward. We'll try to do a better job if we didn't do it as well as you like. The Sergeant Major of the Army's got to leave here in a couple minutes, so I wanted you him to have an opportunity to speak to you as a group. So SMA, please.
First of all, let's give, and they're not done. Actually, these gentlemen up here are available for your questions after I leave, and because I apologize. I have to go to the next event here to recognize some more of our super soldiers. But they're also available to you all the time. These are our senior-most sergeant majors in the United States Army, or ACOM. So let's give them a big round of applause for their professionalism. Okay. So I do want to take this opportunity to re-highlight the importance of what we did yesterday. We recognized the best soldier and the best non-commissioned officer in the United States Army. It's a big deal, okay? It's a big deal. And I bet there's a lot of people out there that say, hey, I could do that. Well, you didn't. Come on. All right? You didn't. I don't care how good you think you are. You didn't get tested, tried, and trued, but these two individuals do. Could I get the soldier and the non-commissioned officer to please stand up? And let's just turn around. Let them look at this individual. Try. Are you promotable? Are you promotable? Good. We might promote you then fair soon. Okay, good. But this is just an example of what soldiers should strive to be. Some soldiers may be, but they need to strive to be this, an example for others, okay? And I know there's a lot of non-commissioned officers out there doing that. But why do we do this? Is it just to have competition and give out gifts? No. This is about setting the example, redefining readiness, highlighting the importance of individual tasks because they are the foundation, okay? And these two gentlemen are the symbol of what excellence looks like and what we should all strive to be every single day as soldiers. So thank you. Thank you for your competition. Thank you. Okay. So I don't want to steal the rest of the time away from this gentleman, but I did want to give you an opportunity to throw some rocks at me, okay? So I wanted to give you an opportunity to throw a question or two at me, and if you have anything, I just want one statement in regards to this to help continue to add to this conversation here. We have to stop making excuses to not do things. We got to stop, sergeants, okay? Everywhere I go, Sergeant Major, we're too busy. Guess what? I'm gonna take that away from you. You're gonna be busy for the next 25 years, all right? We gotta stop. I don't care how busy you are. I don't care how much you have to do. It's about what you do, right? Every month I talk to the commanders at PCC and the sergeant majors out at PCC. I say, if you have 1 hour to train for combat, what task are you to train your soldiers on? Well, sergeants, that's what you start with. That's how you prioritize. And then when you run out of time, you let your commander know the things you didn't get done. But we can't start with no. Okay, it's what Sergeant Major Grinston said, right? If you don't have the ability to say yes, you shouldn't be saying no. But we make excuses and we tell our leaders that, and then our soldiers think that, okay? Or sergeants down at the unit level saying, we don't have money to do this. You have no idea how much money we have, okay? We've never given a staff sergeant a checkbook in the Army. You don't have one. We got plenty of money. Congress gave us the most amount of money we've ever had in a long time. We're spending $700 billion on defense, more than the top 5 nations behind us put together. We got $170 billion for the Army. You couldn't spend $170 billion if I gave it to you. All right? It's hard for us to spend $170 billion, but we need to spend it smart, okay? Not everybody needs the ACOG. Not everybody needs the new nods, right? You know what happens to most of them when we go to combat? They sit on the fob in the corner somewhere, and I ask somebody, hey, what does that little stadium line mean inside your ACOG? Oh, no. But it looks cool when I walk the chow, right? So, all right, we got to spend this stuff smart. But we don't have a finance problem, okay? All right, but we do have a problem with just taking the initiative to train our soldiers and using the maximum amount of time, all right, available to us, okay? And that's just non-commissioned officers. Because another one of these sergeant majors said it too, is if our officer corps is fixing our problem, then there's no need for an NCO corps. We shouldn't exist, right? Okay, enough of that. I just wanted to tie in a little bit of conversation because this is important. We are going to redefine the roles of non-commissioned officers, and it begins with sergeant majors. We don't have that. We need to clearly articulate, and we're talking all the way through DAPAM 600-25, so you can map out your career and what the expectation is and what do I have to do and what is the expectation of me at each of those echelons and work our way back down and refresh some of the things that we've done for our other ranks in the non-commissioned officer corps as well, okay? All right, questions from me, real quick. You know, I got to take the opportunity to take a poll here. What do you think about the pinks and green uniform? Hey, there's a disclaimer with this, though. I'm just going to be honest, you know. People might say I'm a little conceited or something, but you got to have a disclaimer with this thing. You're not going to look as good as me in them, all right? You're just not. Not everybody, anyway, okay? No, I'm just kidding. Why? Let me tell you why we're doing this, all right? We have to fundamentally change the perception of the larger population of the American people about the image of the American soldier. We do, okay? Is a uniform going to do that by itself? No, but it does, okay? It has an impact, all right? And we need to have the conversation at the American dinner table on service in our military. Good, bad, right, or wrong, it needs to occur because you have to first instill a perception before you can change one, okay? And we have to show the American people that we are a professional army that's tied to a historic roots of the prominent times throughout our history that most Americans still today connect with, okay? I was in West Virginia, unfortunately, burying one of our fellow soldiers a couple weeks ago that died in Afghanistan. I went in a restaurant after the funeral. I was in my dress blue uniform. When I walked in, the lady in the restaurant asked me, "Are you in the military?" And I said, "Yes, I am. I am." "What service are you in?" That keeps the Sergeant Major of the Army up at night, okay? Because there should be no mistake. There should be no mistake who we are and what we do, okay? Now, one problem is we don't wear this stuff enough, okay? And we're going to change that. Some of you are not going to like that, all right? And no decision has been made on this yet, but that decision is forthcoming, okay? What I'd ask you to do is, everybody is entitled to their personal opinion. The thing about joining the Army is you're just not allowed to express it anymore, all right? That's right, so, but you are entitled to it. But if we make a decision, we need to support it. Because I'll tell you right now, the majority of our soldiers love it, all right? Because they haven't been through all the change we've been through, and they haven't been through it. Most of you haven't either, because we made the decision to go to Blues like 20 years ago, all right? So, but it is a defining moment in American history, the period of World War II. And there isn't a single person out there that can't remember that their grandfather wore that uniform. And we have to capitalize on the efforts that our soldiers have done for the last 17 years. And that is, we are the next greatest generation, okay? And we shouldn't be afraid to say that, all right? And we shouldn't be afraid to adopt the legacy of those people that founded that principle. Okay, we shouldn't, all right? Any question for me? Yes, sir.
Sergeant Major, First Sergeant Ruiz, Alpha Company 51st Signal Battalion out of Joint Base Lewis McChord. The other day when I picked up my race bib, I didn't know that history struck me right in the face. I met, for a brief moment, Staff Sergeant Kelly, the first female Ranger School non-commissioned officer to graduate that school.
Is Sergeant Kelly here?
She's here somewhere.
She was here. She's not in the forum. She's here at AUSA. But go ahead. Yep.
Sergeant Major, it didn't quite hit me that one day she's going to be in a history book. And I started thinking, and throughout the race, it was just kind of one of those thoughts that was going through my head. In your professional opinion, Sergeant Major, because our country and our Army is built on progressive change, when do you see, in your professional opinion, when do you see either the first non-maneuver Sergeant Major of the Army or the first female Sergeant Major of the Army?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I'll let my Sergeant Majors, so I think very soon, to be honest with you. I think the potential of that could be as soon as when I leave this position. There's female Sergeant Majors that have the requisite level of assignments prior to this that will meet the requirements to compete for this position, okay? And that's really what it's about, okay? So why do we have a tendency to see males in most of the ACOMs like we have now? Because when you're in Forces Command, you have to have the requisite knowledge at the different echelons to be able to lead and perform at that. There's something to be said about that, okay? Battalions, brigade, divisions, and corps. Those are large organizations that serve in very complex operational environments. Now that we've opened up all of the positions in the Army, okay? All these positions in the Army to both males and females, the potential for that is obviously greater in the future, okay? And that takes some time. But we're closer than what you think, okay? We are closer than what you think. At the nominative level, almost all of our positions are open to every single MLS because we're 00 Zulus, okay? I tell my senior sergeant majors all the time, if you're an artillery soldier, I could care less if you could sling rounds out of that gun faster than anybody else in the world. That's not what you're supposed to do anymore. Your job, now obviously, you could still advise on that because that's your background, that's what your expertise is, all right? But every single day you're focused on the operational and strategic level of things that need to happen in the Army, okay? So I think that we're close, okay? Very close. I think the potential exists and it's greater than it ever has obviously been. But the requisite positions are what really makes somebody eligible for that position, okay? If you ask me personally, you shouldn't be an ACOM Sergeant Major unless you've led at the 2- and 3-star level, okay? You just have to have that level of experience. Sergeant Majors, any comments? Did you want to chime in?
Sure, SMA. I think I may not like your question. It's not about maneuver, non-maneuver. It's about, remember I told you about, it's about talent. And I actually liked what Rick Merritt, you know, he led the program. He's in here, and I'm still a fan. You know, what he did to get Ranger School open to everybody. Here's the standard. So you can see that across all the commands. It's about having a talented person that has the knowledge, skills, and behaviors, or knowledge, skills, and attributes to do the job. So it's not about maneuver or non-maneuver. Do you have the knowledge, skills, and attributes to do the job? I think we, as an Army, we think that way at all levels. So if you say, well, I want a non-maneuver person to get that job, okay, that's awesome. If they don't know what they're doing, and it was like, hey, look what we did. Okay, that's what I would ask you to talk about. Do we promote people that have the knowledge, skills, and abilities to the appropriate level? And I say absolutely. Is it going to happen? Sure, it's going to happen. But I want to make sure we do it for all the right reasons. And that's when I go back to Ranger School, is that's what Rick Merritt did. Says, here's the standard. You laid it out, male or female. You meet this standard, and then you're going to get a Ranger tab. It's the same way. Here is the knowledge, skills, and abilities that we need. The behaviors are here. This is what we want you to do. And then you're rising through the appropriate level. And I think that's what we're looking at. And you can look at Steve Helton. I know he's in here. We got the first aviator who's in charge of a division at a numbered kind of division. I got you, Don Rose. I got you. He's one of two that did divisions. And so we looked at the knowledge, skills, and abilities of these folks, and then they got hired. And that's how I think we need to approach it, and not be so maneuver, non-maneuver. You just got to have the skills and abilities. Male, female.
Right. Good question,
black,
bud.
white.
Good question.
SMA, I can add it to that a little bit.
Yeah, go ahead.
I think that every single one of our female non-commissioned officers who have risen to the positions that they're in that are visible to something that I see all the time are truly indeed the right ones to get there for exactly what Sergeant Major Grinston was talking about. And I concur with the SMA. I think we're standing right at the threshold of seeing them move into the upper levels also. It just takes time. You can't it's not like ready mixed concrete. You can't just throw it together and build it. It's got to have time to get experience and develop. And we are doing everything to allow that process to happen, I think, for the right reasons. I'll say that every single one of them that I have seen and witnessed and watched are exactly the right person to be there for that right time. And it's based off of, putting the right person in the right job at the right time in talent management.
SMA.
That's good. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I got to close here because my team in the back's giving me the big hook, telling me I got to go up there to the reception and link up with the Chief of Staff of the Army. I'll tell you is AUSA is not just to go around and look at stuff. That stuff is cool downstairs, all right? But reflect and think about and support these initiatives. So you heard Sergeant Major Grinston's going to do another NCO panel later. Please give him support. Go in there, okay? It's time for us to think about and reflect on how we're going to move the United States Army, and specifically the NCO Corps and our soldiers, all right, to maintain the premier status that we do around the world and continue to support our allies, all right? God bless each and every one of you, Army Strong.
Hey, before you keep your seats for just a second, before you go, I want to just take a second. I want to thank the guys at AUSA, Sergeant Major Preston and his team, for allowing us to present a forum where we're able to discuss really the things that are important for non-commissioned officers, roles and responsibilities. And one more time, I want to thank the panel. They volunteered to be here. Sergeant Major Gooden, Sergeant Major Grinston, Sergeant Major Manskert, Sergeant Major Sellars. Please give them a big hand. If we didn't answer all your questions, I'll be down here in the front. Come on down front. We'll try to answer whatever you got. And thanks for coming. We appreciate it.